starting to feel like family. And gosh, everything we've heard already this morning is why I love you guys so much. So it is an honor to be back here with you again and share about our work together around the world. So a few months ago, I was on the ground in Africa, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be there again in a few months with Pastor Connie. It's going to be an amazing trip. But when I was there, I was in Uganda, and it was our first day on the ground, and we started off early and drove to a very remote part outside of Kampala where we're working. And this is an area of extreme poverty. This is an area that without the work that we're doing there, these kids that grow up there would have very little hope, no hope of an education. They lack food, medical help, everything. But because of the program there and because of a child sponsorship program, they're receiving all of that help and so much more. And most importantly, they're learning about the love of Jesus that just has such a plan for their future. So we drove up to this program there, and as our vans pull up, we can see all these kids, hundreds of kids kind of gathering to greet us. And as we step out of the vans on this beautiful African sunny day, we notice that all the kids have formed sort of two lines, like a pathway to welcome us as we walk in between. So we all get out and we're walking in between the kids, and all of a sudden the kids start clapping and they start chanting over and over again something. And at first, I couldn't understand what they were saying. And then it became really clear. And I want you guys to watch this. So if you couldn't hear, they were saying, "You are welcome, Mama Noel." And you guys, I about lost it. It was like my entire life's work was on display in front of me. I was honored, I was humbled, and I was a complete mess. But here's the thing. While it was special to hear my name, and by the way, I would like to be referred to as Mama Noel for here on out, for all time, if you don't mind. But while that was so special, here's what they were actually saying. They were actually saying, thank you. Thank you, World Help family. Thank you, Freedom Church family. Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for remembering us. Thank you for investing us. Thank you for making a difference in our lives. Thank you. They were saying thank you. And you see, since our partnership began, each one of you have played an incredible role in transforming lives, just like the kids you just saw in that video. You have helped refugees fleeing from war who have lost everything. You have helped sustain them until they can once again go home. You've provided a clean water well for a school in Rwanda, a school that was birthed out of the genocide for kids in need, that has now grown to more than 1,000 students. And because of the water, probably the only clean water many of them will receive, they get nutritious meals there. They have clean water for hygiene and so much more. And they're learning about the love of Jesus. You also provided a well after Hurricane Helene on a church campus where so many people in the community could come and get the only clean water they had access to in probably the darkest hour of their life. That clean water helped provide meals for first responders, and people from the community came with whatever containers they could find, jugs and buckets, whatever would hold clean water, and they were so grateful for that gift. My favorite story, though, that came because of your investment is that an employee from the company that actually drilled the well, because of that experience with the church, has accepted Christ. I mean, the impact that you guys have made is absolutely incredible. And here's the thing. Through our partnership together the last 3 years, you guys have impacted more than 10,225 lives. And before you let that number just spill over you, that's the equivalent of filling this room about 10 times, you guys. It's just amazing what we've been able to do together. And I know that that's just scratching the surface of what you guys have done both here in your community and in other parts of the world. I could go on and on about what an honor it is to do this work together. But for just a moment, I want you to imagine something with me. I want you to imagine those kids that you just saw in the video. I want you to imagine the refugee families that you've been able to help. I want you to imagine those kids in Rwanda that now have clean water because of you. I want you to imagine the desperate families in North Carolina that had clean water when they needed it most. I want you to think of what we've heard already this morning, Happy in Togo. I want you to think about the family in Honduras. I want you to think about those 20 kids in Haiti and what we have an opportunity to do here together this morning. And I want you to use your imagination to think of all of those people celebrating with us what you have an opportunity to be a part of today. And if you use your imagination, I think you can hear them clapping and chanting together and saying, "You are welcome. You are welcome. You're welcome, Papa Sean. You're welcome, Mama Connie. You're welcome, Mama Megan and Papa Cody. You are welcome, Freedom Church family. You are welcome. You are welcome." Amen. You see, for over 30 years, that's the kind of work that World Help has had the privilege to be a part of. And we believe in what we call help for today and hope for tomorrow. And I know some of you have heard me explain this before, but what we mean by that is this. We believe without access to things like food and clean water and medicines that our body needs, well, then faith, it can mean very little. But without faith that feeds our souls, then all those other things are just a short-term fix. But when you focus on both, body and soul, that's when true transformation happens in people's lives. And you see, there's one thing I've learned in all these years of this work. It's that if you want to bring about wholeness in the world, you have to love people wholly. If you want to bring about wholeness in the world, you have to love people wholly. And I've witnessed it time and time again. When people have what they need to live another day, deeper hungers emerge. A hunger for belonging, a hunger for community, a hunger for God's word and his ways. And guess what? Both hungers matter to God, and both hungers should matter to us. Charles Spurgeon has a great quote about this. He says, if you give a man the gospel, wrap it in a sandwich. And if you give a man a sandwich, wrap it in the gospel. That's help and hope. So some of you, I think, may be able to relate to me on this because when you get to a certain age, you need lots of glasses, right? And I, years ago, got to that age where I had readers everywhere in my car, in my office, in my bedstand, in my purse, everywhere. Well, I got tired of this. I wanted to go to the eye doctor. I didn't want to have like permanent glasses. I was like, I'm just going to get contacts. So that day when I got contacts, and the doctor put those contacts in my eyes for the first time, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was so excited because I thought I just needed glasses and readers to read. And I realized I actually needed contacts to like see everything. And everything became so clear. And I was so excited. It was like a whole new world opened up until there was a mirror right beside me. And I turned to the mirror and every fine line and wrinkle that I hadn't seen in years became really clear. And then it wasn't so fun. But on that doctor visit, he was teaching me about contacts because I hadn't worn them before. And he said, now, Noel, listen, just because you have contacts in, he said, it's really important that you have good light when you're reading. He said something that has stuck with me since. He said, light changes everything. Light changes everything. You see, I remember coming back from my first trip to Thailand. I'd actually been in Thailand and India, spending a lot of time meeting young women, hearing their stories, interviewing them. So many women who have been exploited because of the sex industry. And I came back from that trip a bit stunned. I couldn't believe what I had seen. I couldn't believe the stories that I had heard. I was trying to process everything I had seen and experienced. And I found myself back in church that Sunday after I got back, and everything was a blur. And I can't even remember what my pastor was preaching about that day. All I remember is he said these words. He said, God is with us in the dark places. I remember sitting there thinking, no, he's not. No, he's not. I've just been to some really dark places, and I couldn't find God there. I wanted to desperately. I wanted to find answers. I wanted to find some peace. I wanted to find some kind of goodness, some light. But instead, it felt like he was absent. Instead, it felt like where I had been and what I had seen was too dark and too dirty and really too vulgar for God. Now, here's the thing. I bet if I asked for a show of hands, many of you, especially women that have their bags here, their purses, I bet a lot of you have hand sanitizer in some form on you today, right? And if you don't, it's probably in the halls of the church or it's in your car, and you certainly have it at home. That's sort of what we took from the pandemic, right? We want to keep ourselves safe. We want to keep ourselves sanitized, especially whether it's the pandemic or the flu season that we're going through. We want to protect ourselves from germs. And while there's nothing wrong with keeping yourself safe and sanitized and free from germs when it comes to a virus, it doesn't work so well when we apply it to our faith. You see, because what I realized is that I was the one that made God disappear. I was the one that thought he was absent. God wasn't absent in all the darkness, it was me. I was the one who made him disappear. I was the one that decided that that place was too dark and too dirty for God. You see, I had sanitized the gospel. You see, I didn't think God belonged there. And I think we have sanitized our faith to the point where it makes sense in our world. It makes us feel safe, but it only makes sense in our clean, safe, comfortable world. But how does it hold up in the darkest and dirtiest places of the world? Because we have turned the gospel into something that meets our needs and fits neatly into the safety of our churches and homes, but it was meant for so much more. You see, I had decided that that place was too dark, too dirty, and too vulgar for God. But where was Jesus found in the Bible? Who did he hang out with? And where would he be today? Would he be in my world, or would he be in that one? Jesus didn't avoid the darkness, he invaded it. Jesus didn't keep his hands clean, he got dirty. Jesus didn't just focus on the beautiful, he focused on the unworthy, the underdog, and the unclean. Jesus embraced the darkness. And I believe we are called to invade the darkness with his powerful light. And that's why today I want to focus on this verse with you. It's a verse you've all heard. It's a verse I was familiar with, but a few years ago, it stood out to me in a new and powerful way. And it's found in John 1:5, where it tells us, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, I underlined an important word on that slide, the word in. Because what I began to learn and realize is that the light can't shine in the darkness unless it's in the darkness. You with me? The light can't shine in the darkness unless it's in the darkness. We have to be in the darkness in order for God's light to shine. I love the way the Message version puts this verse too. I don't have a slide for it, but it says, the life light blazed out of the darkness, and the darkness couldn't put it out. You see, as people of faith, we are called to the dark places. We are called to the dark places to rescue and bring that light. And the light changes everything. The light shines in the darkness. A few months ago, I was back on the ground in Thailand doing some of that same work. And we worked there in the heart of the red light districts, trying to rescue as many of those women as we can. But here's the thing. What if we could stop that vicious cycle before it even begins? And so this time I was in northern Thailand visiting some of our child sponsorship programs where we're trying to do just that. Because if you can interrupt a child's life with freedom at a young age, that means you can end the vicious cycle and they will never have to make that horrible choice to end up on the streets. So I was in this community visiting the work there, and I visited this family who had a daughter, twin daughters named Sano and Samai, beautiful little girls. And they were telling me, the parents were telling me how much the program meant to them. You see, they live in an elephant camp. This is a beautiful area, an area of extreme poverty, and the father literally takes care and trains the elephants. In fact, I was standing out in front of their modest home, and an elephant literally just walked by me. No chains, no rope, nobody, just walked right by me. But I was talking to the family in this home, and when I say home, it was some boards pieced together to provide some shelter. And the father and mother were just telling me what this program meant to them because they're able to attend a church nearby. The pastor of that church is investing into these children, and one of their daughters is part of the child sponsorship program, and they were telling me just what a change it has been into her life and the opportunities and how it's changed their family. But they desperately wanted the other twin daughter to be part of the program. And they were telling me, we want her to experience the same things that her sister is being able to experience. So don't worry, that night I called my husband on the phone, told him the whole story. We are now the proud sponsors of the other sister, Smai. It was a beautiful moment. But here's what I wanted you to know. When I was interviewing the father, I asked him what I thought was a simple question. And I said, what is your dream for your daughters? What do you want her to be when she grows up? And I expected an answer, something that was going to benefit the family, like, oh, I want her to be a doctor. I want her to be a teacher. I want her to make money to help support us. But that's not what he said. He said, I want her to have a choice. I want her to choose. And I get choked up every time I tell that story because you have to understand that choice will save her life. That means that she can choose to keep following Jesus. That means she can choose to stay in school. That means that she can choose a career that means she won't end up in the heart of the red light district where women age out at 38 and are sick the rest of her life. That choice will save her life. You see, that is the power of help and hope, of meeting spiritual needs and physical needs. And through the work of that church in an elephant camp in northern Thailand, God is moving. And I'm here to tell you today that even in the darkness of the red light districts of Thailand, God is shining his light, and we are invited to join him. You see, if we aren't leaving room in our lives to actually see the darkness, to be in the darkness, then how can we help people who are in most need? You have to be in the darkness in order for the light to shine. I just returned from Cuba a few weeks ago, where we're doing a lot of work there on the ground with some church planters. And you have to understand how difficult life in Cuba is, how hard it is just to find food for your family, and especially how hard it is to be a Christian, and then on top of that, to be a church planter. The hardship they face, the persecution they face is unbelievable. But we gathered with them, and instead of telling us stories about that, they told us so many stories of hope. I got to visit a new feeding program that one of these church planters had started to help the children in his community because the kids were so hungry that they were going to school and passing out because they didn't have enough food to eat. And now through this program, they're receiving nutritious food. They're hearing about the love of Jesus, and he's making an incredible difference in their life. And it reminded me of another trip I was on in Cuba where I once again gathered with those church planters. And one by one, they were coming up to the front, giving their testimonies. And I remembered there was this one man standing in front wearing like a purple jacket. And as soon as I saw him, I recognized the jacket. You see, a lot of what World Help does is we're able to ship containers of supplies around the world to help people with clothing and food. And I realized he was wearing one of the jackets that I had seen in our warehouse and realized he must have been one of the recipients of those clothes. Well, he starts to tell his story about how he's working in a remote area of Cuba that he felt called to. And he took some athletic jerseys that had been donated to us and that were on that shipment. Only they were adult jerseys. So creatively, he takes all these jerseys, he has them cut down to kid sizes, and he forms a soccer team in this remote area of Cuba with a full soccer team of kids with matching uniforms, which again, you have to understand, big deal in this part of the world. Well, you can imagine all of the kids and all of the outlying communities, they now want to be part of this soccer team in this community. And you can imagine what has happened to his ministry, to the kids and the families that he's now able to reach just because of that one thing. And what's the thing he asked us for? Bibles. He needed more Bibles to reach all of these people because he started a kids' soccer team. You see, that's the power of the gospel. That's the power of help and hope. And I'm here to tell you today that even in the darkest of physical and spiritual hunger in Cuba, God is shining his light, and we're invited to join him. You see, my prayer today, Freedom Church, for you is that this church wouldn't just be recognized as just another big church who does missions, but instead a community of rescuers who are not afraid to go to dark places. Because I just can't help but think, if Jesus were here on earth today, where would he be? Would he be sitting in this room with us? I hope so. I think he'd be very pleased with what your church is doing and how you care about people and how you love people. But I'd be willing to bet that we would find him in some other places. See, I think he'd be shining his light in the heart of those red light districts, telling those women they are loved and redeemed. I believe he'd be shining his light in those remote villages of Africa where people struggle every day from the effects of dirty water, offering them hope and the living water. I believe he'd be shining his light on the streets of Cuba, helping feed those kids. I believe he'd be shining his light in places like North Carolina, where natural disasters have taken everything from people and showing them the hope, helping them rebuild. I believe he'd be with that mom in Togo and those kids in Haiti and that family in Honduras. Jesus would be found in the darkness because there is nothing too dark or too impossible for our God. And if we want to join him in the kingdom work, then we have to join him in the dark places. When I visited Africa a few months ago, there was a woman on the trip with me that's a worship leader in California. So every place we went, every stop we made, they wanted her to sing. They brought her up, or we sort of forcibly pushed her up and said, she's the one that can sing. So she had picked a song for the trip, a song that I'm sure you're familiar with, Waymaker. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. That is who you are. So by the time we got to the Church of the Blessed Mango Tree in Rwanda, we had heard her sing this song over and over again and loved singing along. And the reason this church is called Church of the Blessed Mango Tree is because it was birthed out of the genocide, where in 100 days, back in 1994, more than 800,000 people were murdered. This church started meeting under, you guessed it, a mango tree. In fact, in the early days, my dad actually preached at this church with a drum as his pulpit. Well, you fast forward now to a beautiful church building where they meet with a beautiful cross in the front made out of one of those original mango trees. Well, what you find in churches like this and really villages all across Rwanda now are people who once fought against each other, people who committed horrific crimes against each other, families who turned against other families are now meeting together, working together, living together, worshiping together. It is a beautiful story of forgiveness and redemption. Well, we arrived to the church that morning and we didn't really have time to greet the small worship team. We didn't know much about this church. We didn't know what songs they sang. We didn't know how they worshiped. And so they called my friend up to sing her song and they asked for her phone to plug into their hookup to their kind of makeshift sound system to play the track. So she tried to do that, but it wasn't working well, and the song was kind of crackly, and she was having trouble keeping up to the beat of the song. And my group, we're sitting in the front row, we're just trying to smile and act encouraging to her as she's struggling through this. Well, all of a sudden in the corner, the drums start to play. And the drums are actually playing along with the song. And then all of a sudden, we hear the keyboard start to play along with the song. And then one by one, that small worship team started standing up and joining her on stage and singing that song together. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, that is who you are. And then one by one, sitting all around us, the congregation started to stand and they started to sing the song, Waymaker, miracle worker, that is who you are. You see, what my friend knew, but none of us on the group knew until then, is that song that we all know and love, Waymaker, it was actually written by a Nigerian worship leader. So the people in Africa, they know this song better than we do. By this time, my group in the front row, we had lost it. We are on our feet, hands in the air, tears streaming down our face, singing, Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. That is who you are. You guys, in one moment, the nations came together through worship. And it was so beautiful. And it was also a powerful reminder that this is God's heart. People from every nation and background joining together in worship. This is what it looks like when God's light pierces through the darkness, when his love binds together cultures and languages. His mission is global. And we are invited to join him in bringing the hope of the gospel to every nation. The worship band is coming back now, and I have a little bit more that I want to share with you. But I wanted to pause right here so that you could experience a little bit of that moment that we experienced in Africa.